She laughed in a way I hadn't heard in years, that open, melodic kind of laugh, the one she used to have with me back before we stopped finishing dinners at the table and started finishing shows in separate rooms. I stood just inside the mudroom, the door still cracked behind me. She hadn't heard me come in. Her voice was low, flirty. "God, you're awful," she giggled. Silence, then, "No, you hang up first." The kitchen clock ticked. The faucet dripped. She stood barefoot in front of the fridge, her back to me, one hip cocked out. I saw her thumb hit the screen and the phone disappear into her purse. "Hey," I said, stepping forward like I hadn't just caught her mid-middle school crush voice. She jumped slightly and turned. "Oh, didn't hear you come in. Got off early." "Nice." There was a strange silence between us, as if she was waiting to see how much I'd heard. "Who was that?" I asked, keeping it light. She blinked, smiled like it was nothing. "Just Kevin, from the office. We grabbed a drink after the budget meeting." I nodded. She leaned in, kissed my cheek. Her perfume hit me immediately, lilac and spice heavier than usual. She only wore that one for holidays, or parties, not budget meetings. She started up the stairs. "Dinner's in the fridge. I'm gonna shower. Just long day." I stood there for a beat too long. I hadn't mentioned dinner or asked what time she got back. I just watched the way she walked, fast, like she wanted to be out of the room, and I started to feel it. That itch, that slow, creeping thing behind your ribs when something doesn't match. "Just a drink," she repeated later, when she came down in sweats, face clean, wine glass in hand. "Mm-hmm." I didn't push. I've never been the jealous type. Didn't want to become one now. But when I lay in bed that night, eyes open in the dark, her words looped. That name. The little pause before she said it. Kevin. From the office. Kevin, who she said was barely a friend last year when they worked on the Q4 analysis. Kevin, whose name never came up again until tonight. Her smile had lingered too long, and I kept seeing it, hearing it. Funny how the mind works when it's trying not to think about something. And yet, there I was, listening to the faint buzz of her phone on the nightstand, wondering why she flipped its screen down before crawling under the blanket. She never used to do that. It was always face up, notifications lighting up the dark like fireflies. Not tonight. And here's the thing most won't admit. Sometimes it's not one big betrayal that breaks you. Sometimes it's the silence, the shrug, the casual lie, delivered like it's too small to matter. But I knew something shifted. Look, if you're still reading this and it feels too familiar, this is the part where I ask you to do something small but important. Subscribe. It's dumb how more than 90% of people won't, but it makes a massive difference. Keeps this going. Helps the team tell stories people actually feel. So yeah, if you're in, hit that button. All right, back to it. The next morning, she acted normal. Made coffee, asked if I wanted eggs. I watched her from across the kitchen and said, "No thanks." She was humming, light on her feet, and I wondered, who was the song for? At lunch, I scrolled back through old photos on my phone, for no reason really, just remembering. I found one from last Christmas. She was holding a wine glass, smiling in that same exact way, but it was for me back then. That night, she had another late call, budget planning again. I watched her retreat into the home office, close the door, and switch on that soft yellow desk lamp I got her 2 birthdays ago. The door muffled the laugh this time, but not enough. It was the same laugh. And I laid there, in our shared bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how a man like Kevin, who was just a colleague, had managed to pull a smile out of her that I hadn't seen in months. I didn't have proof yet, just air and instincts. But smoke finds the fire eventually. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was just awake now. She started coming home later. Not all at once, just enough to seem like nothing if you weren't paying attention. 20-minute delay here and, oh, traffic was awful there. Then it became dinners. Team drinks. Quarterly check-ins. Always with Kevin. Kevin. The name landed softer each time she said it, like a worn pebble getting rounded by the tide. Eventually, she just called him Kev, as if that was supposed to make him sound harmless, familiar, dull. "You know how Kev gets," she said one Thursday. "He turns everything into a 3-hour debrief." I smiled. Sounds exhausting. "Oh, he's funny, though. Keeps it light." She was already scrolling through her phone, not looking at me. Another night, another dinner she didn't eat. Sorry, she said, kicking off her heels. Client cocktails went long. We did this whole recap thing at the bar. I opened the fridge. Her untouched salad from 2 days ago still sat there. I shut it quietly. Kev again? I asked without looking up. Mm-hmm. Him, Tracy, Brent, the usual gang. Must be nice. I haven't been out with coworkers in, what, a year? She shrugged, pulled off her earrings. Well, your work crew's different. Right, different. Blue-collar guys don't do charcuterie and rooftop toasts. Later that week, we were sitting on the couch, TV on, neither of us watching it, when her phone buzzed. She checked it, smiled to herself. One of those involuntary warm grins that aren't meant to be shared, the kind you try to stifle but can't. I caught it. What's funny? She flipped her phone face down again. Just a meme from work. I didn't respond, just leaned back and stared at the ceiling. That night, when she drifted off, I waited until her breathing got slow and even. Then I reached across to her nightstand and unlocked her phone with the code I wasn't supposed to know. The message preview sat there, unbothered. KC. Couldn't stop thinking about your laugh today. You were glowing. I stared at it for a while. Not angry, not even shocked. Just quiet. I took a picture of the screen with my phone, not to confront her. Not yet. I just wanted to have it, to remember I wasn't crazy. Then I opened her message, deleted the notification, and backed out like I'd never been there. She rolled over in her sleep and mumbled something. I watched her for a second, trying to remember the last time she'd laughed like that in this house. With me. She hadn't called him KC before. Not out loud. She'd never mentioned initials, but I'd heard the name Kevin plenty of times. My guess? That contact label wasn't to hide him from me. It was to keep him camouflaged in her phone, unassuming. Every time she said it's nothing, I started making quiet notes in my head. Thursday, late, no explanation. Saturday, showered before running to the store. Sunday, spent an hour helping Kev prep for Monday's presentation. Always Kev. I started tracking the pattern. She changed her voicemail greeting, more cheerful, almost flirtatious. She wore lipstick again, not red, not bold, just a gloss, but it was new. I found the receipt in the trash one morning, $42 for something called Daydream. One night, I watched her standing in front of the mirror, rehearsing a story. Not for me, for someone. She was practicing the tone. I said nothing, just observed. I wasn't planning anything, not yet, but I was learning. Men like me, we don't explode. We absorb. We wait. We know when pressure builds, it doesn't come out in a scream, it comes out in precision. I renamed the photo of the message in my phone. KC Lachlan JPG. Dropped it into a private folder, locked it, then set up a second backup on my laptop, just in case. The next day, she left early for a brainstorming session. I stayed home, cleaned the garage, organized old boxes. I found a file labeled Contacts Work Events in one of our shared cloud folders. Inside, a list of names, job titles, and emails from her department. Kevin was there, and so was his wife, apparently, Melissa Carter, marketing accounts. I made a mental note, no confrontation, no dramatic speech. I was just watching now. And Heather, she was glowing. The mixer was hosted in one of those hotels where the lighting's always too soft and the wine is always too warm. A forgettable ballroom with little white name tags, bad jazz covers, and catering that tastes like nothing at all. Heather had mentioned it casually a week before. Spouses are welcome. Come on, it'll be fun. You never go to my work stuff. I almost said no, but I didn't. Something in her tone, too casual, too quick, made me say, sure, why not? She looked surprised, and that confirmed more than I wanted it to. We arrived around 7. Heather wore a sleeveless navy dress I hadn't seen before. Subtle, expensive. Something about the way it clung to her hips told me it wasn't bought with me in mind. She'd paired it with that same perfume, the one I now associated with nights she came home humming. Inside, people buzzed around small tables and crowded the bar. Heather slipped into the room like she owned it. All air kisses and office inside jokes. That's Brent from HR, she said, motioning vaguely. He won't shut up about his dog. And that's Tracy, runs our onboarding. Then, oh, there's Kev. Come meet him. And there he was. Kevin was exactly what I expected and exactly what I didn't. A bit younger than me, maybe late 40s, clean cut in that finance guy way. Tight fade, tailored blazer, brown leather watch that probably cost more than my truck's radiator. Daniel, right? He said, shaking my hand like he wanted to prove something. I've heard a lot about you. I smiled. I bet. He laughed. Heather tensed for half a second before leaning in to kiss his wife on the cheek. Melissa. She was gentle, soft-spoken, maybe 5'4" with kind eyes and a look that flickered too quickly between welcoming and wary. The way she held Kevin's arm when he laughed a little too loud. The way her smile cracked just slightly when Heather laid a hand on his shoulder during a joke. It was all there if you knew what to look for. And I did. We made small talk. Office politics. The new branch opening. Melissa asked about my work and listened like it actually mattered. Her laugh was real, but never loud. I liked her instantly. She had that quiet sadness you only recognize if you've worn it too. At one point, Heather excused herself to the bar with Kevin to grab another round. I stood next to Melissa, watching them across the room. She didn't say anything, but I caught the flicker in her eyes. It wasn't jealousy, it was confirmation. By the time Heather came back, her smile was 3 glasses deep and her voice 2 decibels higher. On the drive home, she was giddy, rambling about Tracy's bad karaoke and someone named Raj who spilled wine on the CFO. Then out of nowhere, "Melissa's so sweet," she said, laughing to herself, "but so boring, don't you think?" I didn't look at her. I just kept driving. "You seem to know her pretty well." Silence. It lasted too long. Then, "Well, I mean, Kev talks about her sometimes. You know how it is." That pause, right after I said it, that was the slip. Her brain had lagged just a second too long, a hiccup in the story. She was caught not in a lie, but in the absence of one. The part of the lie she hadn't practiced. She deflected after that, talked about the dessert, then changed the music, then started a story about someone's kid getting into Brown. I let her. I sat with the new information, because now it wasn't just about Heather and Kevin. It was about Melissa. I started replaying every interaction, every glance Melissa gave her husband, every blink when Heather leaned too close, that half smile Melissa wore like armor. I'd been so focused on Heather's patterns that I hadn't realized there was another person in the web, someone who'd clearly seen it unraveling from the inside, someone who might, in time, need to know what I knew. Back home, Heather kicked off her heels and poured another glass of wine. I said I was tired and went upstairs early, but I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk with the photo of Casey's message open on my screen and started a new folder. I named it M, just one letter, for now, because the truth wasn't just between Heather and Kevin, it was coming for all 4 of us. It started with the calendar sync. Heather had left her tablet in the living room, screen unlocked, dimmed but still glowing. I walked past it on the way to the kitchen and noticed the notification. Q1 event pics uploaded, review. It was from the cloud folder we used when she needed help resizing graphics or converting PDFs. Years ago, I was her unofficial tech guy. Now she barely remembered the login, but the devices were still synced, still shared, sloppy. I clicked out of reflex, not even sure what I was looking for. Just something. And then I saw it. Not the ones she posted, not the polished Instagram perfect squares where everyone looked just removed enough from each other to pass for professional. This was raw footage. Full resolution. No filters. One photo from an off-site event 2 months prior stopped me cold. They were sitting on a bench in what looked like a hotel courtyard. Late afternoon light, plastic wine cups in hand. Kevin's arm casually draped over Heather's shoulder, fingers brushing her collarbone like he'd done it 100 times. But it was her other hand that burned into me, resting gently, deliberately, on his knee. Not a mistake. Not a candid. That kind of hand placement comes from familiarity, from confidence. I checked the timestamp, then I pulled up Heather's text from that day, screenshot folder, date matched, her message to me at 6:47 p.m. Long day, finally back in my room, exhausted. Talk tomorrow? The photo? Taken at 6:43. I stared at her smile in the picture. Loose, real, not the tight one she gave me when I asked how her day went. She never posted this one. I bet she told Kevin it was too casual or not flattering, but it wasn't for public eyes. It wasn't for Melissa. It sure as hell wasn't for me. It was for them. I opened her email next. I had access through an old shared folder on our desktop. Most of it was benign. Receipts, RSVP confirmations, a spreadsheet called Parking Reimbursements Q2, but then I saw it. a folder labeled Drafts Internal Newsletter. I clicked. There was a document titled Spotlight Kevin C. It had version control enabled, 3 edits, all tracked, original draft, manager revision, and then final Heather review. I opened Heather's version. The tone was different, playful. The wording in Kevin's self-written bio was stiff, generic, passionate about client outcomes, motivated by metrics. But Heather's edits, they had warmth, personality. She'd rewritten entire sentences for flow. Kevin's known for his quick wit and calm under pressure. Whether it's leading a complex project or making everyone laugh after a long week, Kevin brings balance to our team. It didn't read like a colleague's voice. It read like a person in admiration. Someone enamored, familiar. She'd added a photo of him at a charity run. The caption? Kevin finishing strong, as always. I leaned back in the chair, reading that line again. Finishing strong. I wasn't even mad. That was the strange thing. No rage, no shouting into a pillow, or breaking something just to feel the snap. Just cold, like someone had turned off a switch inside me. I started organizing. I copied the photo to a separate drive, saved the email version history as PDFs. Took a screenshot of the newsletter caption, then I found the edit logs. They weren't damning, not by themselves, but together, they told a story, a pattern, a buildup of evidence not meant to prove anything to a jury, but enough to sink trust like a stone in a well. I created a folder inside the one labeled M. This one I called Overlap. I knew what I was doing, knew how methodical it looked. But when someone's rewriting stories, sometimes you have to start writing one of your own. Not for revenge, not yet, for clarity. Heather had made a choice. 1,000 small ones, really. No dramatic confessions, no lipstick on the collar, just casual deceit layered so slowly that she assumed I'd never feel the weight of it. But I did, and now I was balancing the scale, not with screams or ultimatums, but with structure. She was still out when I finished. Another working late night. I walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and glanced again at her tablet, still sitting on the table, glowing softly. I turned it off, set it gently down. Tomorrow, I'd dig into the shared folders again, check timestamps, match logins. Heather had been sloppy, but I wouldn't be. There's a certain stillness you reach. The shock burns off, and the ache settles into something colder. Not quite peace, just clarity with a sharp edge. That's where I live for the next few weeks, moving around her like furniture, watching, cataloging, collecting. Heather went on with her life like the ground beneath her wasn't thinning by the day. She laughed louder, stayed out longer. She'd come home with a buzz on her breath and perfume that didn't linger the same way anymore. Too fresh, too reapplied. I'd ask how the team strategy session went, and she'd give me a rehearsed anecdote about Brent misplacing his laptop or Tracy knocking over her wine. Kev told the funniest story about one of his clients, she said one night, fork midair. Oh yeah? She blinked, almost surprised I responded. Yeah. Something about a sales call, and anyway, guess you had to be there. I'm sure you were. She looked up then, just for a second. My tone had changed, less passive, more precise. That was the moment I knew the window was closing. Soon I'd stop pretending, but not yet. Instead, I started tightening the net. It began with a spreadsheet, quietly labeled, deeply buried in a personal folder. I built it like a crime board. Dates of late arrivals, times of calls, screenshots of texts Heather hadn't noticed me swiping from the cloud backup. I pulled metadata from photos, GPS stamps from shared albums, a picture from a team brunch, Heather's glass next to Kevin's plate, his sunglasses on the table, her jacket draped behind him. Their shadows leaned in too close for just work. Each piece got cataloged, not dramatic, just undeniable. Then came the receipts. One for a boutique hotel restaurant 3 towns over. Midday, Tuesday. She'd said she was working from home. The credit card statement listed it under Cedarstone Inn Lounge. I looked it up. The tagline read, "Where luxury meets privacy." I almost laughed. While digging for our joint tax forms in the office drawers, I found an old box of business cards, a mess of bent edges and half-smudged logos from years of conferences. I wasn't looking for anything, but there it was. Melissa Carter. Senior marketing accounts. I stared at it like a relic, like a weapon. I took a photo, front and back. Then I opened my phone and finally did what I'd been putting off. I built the image.
One screenshot, clean, surgical, the photo of Kevin's text. Couldn't stop thinking about your laugh today. Below it, Heather's reply. Your trouble. I can't stop either. Timestamped, labeled, undeniable. I cropped it for clarity, added nothing, removed nothing. The truth didn't need editing. Then I opened a new message window, entered Melissa's number, attached the image, and wrote, Thought you deserved to know. This has gone on long enough.
I stared at it, no shaking hands, no racing pulse, just that quiet moment before the triggers pulled. But I didn't hit send, not yet. Instead, I saved it. Drafts folder, labeled simply, ready. Because now the weapon was built, the barrel was loaded, the safety was off. All that remained was timing. And timing, that would be everything. I closed the message, backed it up to my drive, and powered off the phone. Heather came home that night humming again, slid into the kitchen, and kissed me on the cheek like she hadn't just blown up a life she assumed I was too blind to see. How was your day? She asked. Quiet, I said. Productive. And it was, just not in the way she'd understand. Heather thought she was playing a game of secrets. She hadn't realized she was up against a man who'd stopped playing. Now I was building something else entirely. Not revenge. Structure, consequence, precision. The kind of message you only send once and never take back. She left the house at 6:17 p.m., heels clicking down the walkway like she had somewhere righteous to be, hair curled just enough, blouse a little too low for strategy talk, eyes darting once toward me through the living room window before she pulled out of the driveway. No kiss, no don't wait up, just gone. I didn't ask where the dinner was being held. She offered it up anyway. Someplace near the office. Kevin and Brent are putting together numbers. Could be late. Of course it could. I waited. Not like a man waits for his wife. Like a man waits at a wiretap, headphones on, watching the needle move. The living room was dark, but I didn't turn on the light. Just sat in the chair she always said looked too cold and watched the street lamp outside flicker like it couldn't decide whether to die or keep trying. At 9:23 p.m., my phone buzzed. Heather, don't wait up. Running late. No punctuation. Casual. Like she'd sent it 1,000 times. Like I wasn't at home staring into the thick silence she left behind. I typed one word. Me. Understood. Then I opened the draft. Melissa's number. The screenshot. The caption. Thought you deserved to know. This has gone on long enough. My thumb hovered for one breath. Then I hit send. Nothing exploded, no sirens, no cinematic swell, just the quiet buzz of the message dispatching, the phone screen returning to idle, and my reflection staring back at me from the window, still, deliberate, unflinching. 10 minutes passed. I didn't move. Then the reply. Melissa, thank you. I knew something was wrong. 7 words, not surprise, not rage. Just confirmation. Grief with the edges already sanded down. Stared at it a long time. At 10:04 p.m., the door burst open. Heavy rain out of nowhere, Heather called as she stepped inside, shaking her hair out dramatically. God, Kevin forgot his umbrella. She stopped because I was standing in the hallway, waiting. She closed the door slowly, like she'd just registered the air had changed temperature. We need to talk, she said. I nodded. Yes, I imagine you do. She held her purse tight like it might contain an explanation, or an excuse, or maybe a time machine. Whatever you think is going on. I held up my hand. Calm, firm. Then I walked to the dining table and slid my phone across it toward her. One image on the screen, Kevin's message, her reply, the timestamp, the evidence, the mirror. Heather stared at it for a second too long, then looked up. It wasn't. Her voice cracked halfway through whatever sentence she hadn't rehearsed. You know Melissa, don't you? I asked quietly. She's quite kind. Softer than you. She didn't answer. Her breath was quick now, shoulders tight. I told her, I added, about the laugh, about the texts, the photos, the way your hand fit so easily on another man's knee. I didn't mean to hurt you, she blurted. I raised an eyebrow. You didn't mean for me to find out. That's different. Silence. Just the slow drip of the kitchen faucet, ticking off the seconds like a metronome for collapse. She sat down, as if gravity had finally caught up.
You have to understand, she said, voice trembling. It just happened. I tilted my head. Was it during the budget review or the hotel brunch? I lose track. Her face went slack. Whatever mask she'd been planning to wear to this conversation, it slipped. She reached for the phone. I let her take it, watch her scroll, see the evidence from my angle. I wanted her to feel it, how little she'd covered her tracks, how transparent the lies were when seen in daylight. Then her phone rang. She jumped. Kevin. I could see his name light up the screen like a spotlight at a crime scene. She silenced it, then another buzz, different tone. Melissa. She froze. I stepped back, leaned against the wall. She said she knew. I just gave her the last puzzle piece. Heather covered her mouth with her hand. This will ruin everything. I didn't answer, because it already had. There's a particular sound when someone realizes the mask they wore wasn't protecting them, but was, in fact, the blindfold leading them straight into the fire. Heather made that sound now, and I was just watching the fire catch. Heather followed me into the living room like a shadow that hadn't figured out it was no longer attached to anything. Her eyes darted from the phone in her hand to the photo I'd shown her minutes ago, like if she blinked enough times, reality would glitch and undo itself. It was just flirting, she said weakly. You're blowing this up in your head. I didn't respond right away, just sat down in the chair she used to say wasn't comfy enough, and looked at her like she was a stranger who'd wandered into my home wearing my wife's face. You call that harmless? I asked, voice steady. She hesitated, chewing on whatever excuse was halfway down her throat. It didn't mean anything, she said. It was just, we joked. That's all. Maybe it got carried away, but I leaned forward, grabbed my phone off the coffee table, tapped once and handed it to her. It was the photo from the hotel courtyard. Kevin's arm around her shoulder, her hand on his knee, laughter frozen in time like a confession without words. She stared at it like a gun had gone off in the room, and she was just now hearing the echo. I didn't mean to, she started. I cut her off, still calm. Melissa knows. Everything in her body stopped. Breathing, posture, thought. It all dropped, like the air had been knocked out of her from the inside. What? I sent it, I said, an hour ago. She sat down without meaning to, hands trembling in her lap. Why would you do that? I raised an eyebrow. Because she deserved to know who her husband really was, same as I deserved to know who my wife had become. Her lips parted, then closed. No words came, just the kind of panic that's quieter than screaming. You could see it in her eyes, the mental reel spinning backwards, trying to find the exact frame where things could have been undone. The phone rang again. Kevin. Heather jolted like it had burned her. I watched it buzz, then reach silence again. No one moved, then the second call. Melissa. Heather looked at me like a child caught shoplifting, hoping someone else would step in, fix it, smooth it over. But there was no one left. Just me. And the wreckage. I picked up the phone and answered. Melissa, I said calmly. Yes, I got it. I'll send you the rest in the morning. I figured you'd want full context. Pause. No, I'm fine, really, thank you. I hung up. Heather blinked like she was surfacing from underwater. You're talking to her now? I am? Her voice got small, shaky. She's gonna ruin Kevin's career. That's his problem. She stood up. What about me? What about what this does to me? That's when I really looked at her. Not the person she used to be, not the wife I once believed in. Just the woman who made her choices and watched them curdle. You weren't worried about that when you were laughing over drinks and calling him trouble. That was a joke. No, I said flatly. It was a truth you dressed like a joke so you wouldn't have to admit it. Silence again. She walked to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of wine with the same muscle memory you use when brushing your teeth. She took a sip. Her hand shook just enough to make the glass clink against her ring. Then she said something I'll never forget. I didn't think you'd notice. She meant it. She really did. That was the deepest cut of all. Not the cheating, not the lying, but the complete certainty that I was too blind, too dull, too passive to ever see through her. She had written me out of the story already. I was background furniture. But the thing about furniture, sometimes it's bolted to the damn foundation. Her phone buzzed again. Kevin. And again. And this time, I took it. Looked at the screen, then dropped it on the table without answering. You should tell him it's over, I said. Not just with you, with everything. You don't get to tell me what I do, I said, voice low, because the only reason you're not answering him right now is because you know you're caught, not because you feel guilty, not because you're sorry. I am sorry. You're sorry it unraveled. That's different. I got up, went to the hallway, took the overnight bag I packed earlier that week from the coat closet. She watched me, stunned. Where are you going? Out. For how long? Long enough. She didn't follow, didn't stop me, just stood there with a glass in her hand, mascara starting to smudge beneath her left eye, staring at a door she'd never expected to close. She used to be the center of my world. Now she was just another scene in the crash report. And Melissa was no longer in the dark. That meant neither of us had to be alone in the wreckage anymore.
Kevin lasted 4.5 hours before Melissa shattered the mirror he'd been trying to fog up with excuses. She confronted him at home the same night I sent the message. He walked in, loosened his tie like a man returning from war, not knowing the bomb was already ticking behind the front door. She didn't shout, didn't cry. She waited until he sat down, then, without a word, handed him the phone, the screenshot, my message, Heather's reply. Kevin stared at it like it was in another language. And then, like the coward I'd always suspected he was, he lied. Jesus, Melissa, this? It's not what you think. She didn't blink, just tilted her head. Say that again. Slower this time. He fumbled. Something about inside jokes, about everyone flirting a little in the office, about emotional confusion. But his hands were shaking. And when Melissa asked one question, just one, he cracked. If it didn't mean anything, she said, quiet and even, why did she call you trouble? He didn't have an answer, not one that made sense anyway. She didn't throw a lamp, didn't hurl his things onto the lawn like some TV soap moment. She simply packed his weekend bag, set it by the door, and said, "You've got 1 hour to be gone. After that, I changed the locks." By morning, he was staying at a Marriott off the freeway. Heather didn't know yet, but I did, because Melissa sent me a message at 6:03 a.m. He's out. Thank you again. I feel like I'm finally awake. Meanwhile, back at our house, or what used to be ours, Heather was unraveling. When I came downstairs, she was on the phone, pacing barefoot in the kitchen, one hand gripping the edge of the countertop like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to earth. No, I can't just vanish. We have to control this before it. No, Kevin, listen to me. She told people. Daniel told her. Yes, I know it's bad. She saw me and immediately turned toward the window, voice dropping to a hiss. I didn't wait to hear the rest. I walked to the hall closet, grabbed the second overnight bag I'd packed, neatly, methodically, and carried it upstairs to the guest room. That's where I live now. She found me there an hour later, standing at the window, sipping coffee from a chipped mug she always said didn't match the kitchen. Her voice was soft, too soft, the kind of soft that comes when someone's trying to crawl back inside a story they burned down. Daniel, I need your help. I turned slowly. With what exactly? She stepped forward, eyes red, makeup smudged. We can still fix how this looks. If we move fast, if we get ahead of it, there is no we anymore, I said. Her face contorted. So that's it? After everything? I set the mug down. No more pretending. Not for friends. Not for work. Not for you. Especially not for you. She looked like I'd struck her, but I'd done nothing. Said nothing cruel, just facts. It was noon when I got the call. It was Brent, from HR. Hey Daniel, just a heads up. Melissa Carter filed a formal concern this morning. Kevin and Heather. She attached screenshots, claims there was inappropriate conduct during work hours, misuse of company resources for personal meetings. It's a mess. I didn't say much, just thanked him for letting me know. By evening, the corporate whispers had already begun. Slack threads died mid-sentence when Heather joined, her calendar filled with 1-1 meetings, labeled only by initials. She tried to spin it, I'm sure. Tried to pivot, to gaslight, to suggest misunderstandings and internal miscommunications. But screenshots don't stutter. And when HR pulled up travel logs, reimbursement receipts, and security badge timestamps, the dates aligned with Melissa's evidence perfectly. She was summoned for a formal inquiry, Kevin too. The rumor mill in their office turned instantly. Not cruel, just observant. Colleagues who once bought her drinks now kept their distance. Kevin was quietly suspended pending review. Heather was given the dreaded, "We'll be in touch." I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The professional world she'd tried so hard to impress, the career she wore like armor in every room I was made to feel small in, it was the very thing now clawing at her credibility. At home, she didn't bother with makeup, didn't blast music while she got ready in the morning. She stopped talking about important calls or strategy reviews because there weren't any left. Her phone stopped ringing. Her inbox dried up. The shame wasn't just public, it was personal. And private collapse? That's the loudest kind. I made the appointment on a Tuesday, not because it had any particular meaning, just because it was the first day I didn't feel anything about it. The lawyer's office was in a modest building, second floor, no fancy fountains or espresso bar in the lobby, just a waiting room with old magazines and chairs that creaked when you shifted your weight. Felt honest. Uncontested, ideally, I told him. Clean split, no drama. He nodded, scribbled a few notes, asked a few polite questions about assets, joint accounts, shared property. I answered everything without flinching. I'd already done the math, already separated what was hers, what was mine, and what I didn't want to carry with me anymore. When I left, I didn't feel free, just lighter. Heather, of course, had a different plan. By Friday, word had started to trickle out, not the truth, her version. "She's been telling people you're depressed," a mutual friend texted, "that you checked out emotionally. She said you sleep in the guest room like a stranger and barely speak." Another, "She's making it sound like you just gave up, said she tried to pull you back, but you were unreachable." It was textbook. Paint me as the cold one, the distant one, the man who drifted first. And maybe that would have worked if Melissa hadn't already spoken. Turns out Melissa wasn't just quiet. She was precise. She told her own friends, some of whom overlapped with Heather's, exactly what happened. The messages, the photo, the affair, the aftermath. So when Heather tried to write the narrative in her own colors, it didn't take long for the cracks to show. One by one, the texts stopped coming. Brunch invites dried up. Even her beloved wine night girls thread went silent. Then came the call from her supervisor. I wasn't meant to hear it, but the walls in our house aren't thick enough for shame to hide behind. I caught the tail end through the bedroom door. "Just need to clarify a few things that came up. Can you swing by my office after lunch?" Her voice was tight, professional. "Of course. I'll bring my notes." The door clicked shut. She didn't come out for hours. That night, she didn't eat, just stood in the kitchen nursing a glass of white wine and staring at the tile like it had something to say. I passed her without a word, carrying a box of books to the car. Second trip. The rest would follow tomorrow. I'd already booked a short-term rental across town. Quiet street, simple layout, no shared memories. When I came back in for the last round, she finally broke the silence. "This will destroy me." She said it like a confession, not a warning. I stopped in the hallway, turned slowly. She was leaning against the counter, hair pulled back, eyes red but dry, like she'd finally run out of tears and was trying to barter with the wreckage. I didn't raise my voice, didn't spit some bitter line. I just gave her the only truth left. It already did. Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but she didn't, because she knew. She'd tried to win the narrative like it was a performance review, paint herself as the victim, reframe the story. But the thing about truth is, it's patient. It doesn't need a platform, just time. And Melissa had given it exactly that. The friends who once told her she was glowing now avoided eye contact. The colleagues who used to praise her leadership energy now met behind closed doors. She'd built a career on perception, but perception only works when no one's seen what's behind the curtain. Now they had. I loaded the last box into the trunk, closed it, stood there for a minute listening to the quiet of our cul-de-sac. Porch lights humming, someone walking their dog down the block, the soft thud of a basketball a few houses over. When I went back inside, she was sitting on the couch, still, small. She didn't ask where I was going, and I didn't offer, because the story she tried to spin had spun out of her hands, and all that was left was mine. 6 months later, the air had finally changed, you know the kind, when spring stops pretending and actually means it. The sidewalk was warm underfoot, sun lazy on your shoulders, birds doing their busy nonsense in the trees above. I walked past the bakery where Heather used to insist on Sunday morning croissants, turned the corner without even glancing at the window, and stepped into an old bookstore I hadn't visited in years. It still smelled like pulp and time. Rows of aging hardbacks, a lazy cat in the history section, jazz drifting softly from speakers somewhere behind the register. No pressure, no timelines. Just dust and stories and the permission to stay a while. I browsed without purpose until I saw a spine I half recognized. A prayer for the dying. Not my usual genre. But Melissa had mentioned it once during that company mixer, back when we were all still pretending. It's strange and quiet, she'd said, smiling softly, but it gets under your skin in the best way. So I picked it up, took it to the register. The clerk was maybe 20, pierced nose, reading something about dead emperors. She didn't say much, just rang me up and slid the book into a paper bag. When I got home and opened it, something slipped out between the pages. A card. Plain, cream-colored, folded once, neat and small, no name on the front. Inside, handwritten ink, careful and slow. I hope peace found you. Thank you again. M. I sat there holding it for a long time. Not because I was surprised, but because it felt complete. Melissa hadn't reached out after the fallout. Not once, not to check in, not to process. She didn't need to. We both knew what we had exchanged wasn't a friendship. It was a kind of silent alliance, a recognition. She gave me clarity, I gave her truth. Heather had written, though, letters. 3 of them. The first came a month after I left. Long, meandering, filled with the kind of sorrow you write when you're still trying to figure out which parts to take blame for and which to gift wrap as accidents. She said she missed the smell of my coffee in the morning, that the house felt bigger in the worst way. The second was shorter, angrier, something about betrayal, about how I should have come to her first, how Melissa wasn't innocent either, as if that would balance the scales. The third was quiet, a single page. She wrote that she'd started therapy, that she hoped I was well, that if I ever wanted to talk, just talk, she'd be open to it. I didn't respond to any of them. Not out of spite, not out of bitterness. Just nothing left to say. Some people go looking for closure in loud, crashing moments. Final confrontations. Emotional detonations. I found mine in a folding chair on the back porch of my rental, the sun painting the railing gold, a book in my lap, and a card on the table beside me that simply said, peace. Heather tried to rebuild, I'm sure. Tried to stitch her version of the story into something palatable, something survivable. But the problem with trying to rebuild your life around a lie is that someone somewhere will always remember the blueprint. And my message, that one text sent with no drama, no screaming, became her cornerstone. The fracture everything else had to be built around. I never asked for revenge. I just wanted my time back, my stillness, my clarity. And I got it. Now I sit in the sun, turning pages, not looking at the phone that never buzzes with her name. Alone? Sure. But not lonely. Never that again.